probably share the genetics version.
Okay.
You ready?
Yeah, and just to frame this, so this is Adam Haigler. He is a biology, environmental science teacher, and wears many other hats at Tri-County Early College in Murphy, North Carolina. Adam, take it.
Yeah, so they asked me to share sort of what's been going on at our school, and our school is a project-based learning school. Although this has been slightly overwhelming to pull off a weekend to this school shutdown, the English teacher and I decided to do an interdisciplinary project with the driving question, how can our characters make good decisions about their health and lives through learning more about genetics? And so this is my biology project, and I have an earth and environmental one that's very similar. So the main idea of this is that students are going to choose these characters, and they're going to have backstories, and all these things that relate to a genetic disorder are going to start happening to them, and we'll be drip feeding out sort of scenarios that their character has to respond to in a journal entry that can either be just written, 300, 500 word writing, obviously for the English teacher, or like a graphic novel, comic book style story, or a video blog. So allowing kids some flexibility. We've tied a lot of biology and English targets into this. So we started with our targets and what we needed to do, and then build the project around it.
And by the way, for clarity, you're using HeadRush, is that right?
Yes, this is called HeadRush. It's a project-based learning, competency-based learning software. And also, the English teacher, Miss Chambers, had brainstormed this activity right before break, right before the schools shut down. She said, what would you guys like to do to have fun while we're doing this? And they said, we want to create characters and have this like fantasy world that we're like interacting in. And so that's what we built it on, student voice and choice. This was not our idea, awesome. It was theirs. And so if you look at the task board for this genetics project, I've got this one laid out a little differently, but I've got a week of genetic scaffolding that they fill out an annotated bibliography of these websites for. So just to learn a little bit about genetics 101 while they're doing this character building stuff. So on Monday, they're going to choose their character using this character generator and use this template to finish out the backstory of their character. The characters are totally ridiculous and hilarious. And on that day, we had them on this discussion thread post in character about what their favorite song is. So for instance, hello crazies, my name is Alistair Sky. I'm an evil scientist. My name is pronounced like Alistair. I love metal. My favorite song is Chop Suey. So we had them just start to interact with each other, have that student collaboration as soon as Monday. And then they had to create a Google Doc journal, which we're going to turn into a blog, a la open source learning and David Preston's work, so that they'll be reading each other's journals and be in groups. We had our first Zoom meeting yesterday. We had 27 kids show up out of the 46. So we're still working on equity in that regard. But we actually used breakout rooms and had the students help us. We had an agenda where the students actually helped us continuing to design the project. Like, nice. What kind of assessments do you want? Do you want to do the blog thing? What should the final product look like? Learning labs or study halls on Zoom? So getting their feedback, and then they posted their ideas. Each group posted ideas here about those questions on the discussion thread. And then they'll dig in a little more to their backstory. They'll write a soliloquy today, which is an English target. So just having their character go through some stuff. You've just informed your partner they've been promoted to a senior position at their job. You know, what do you think about that? Write a soliloquy where you express your inner conflict. So that's very strong English. And then I've actually started a Google Hangout group with a student leadership team that is helping me design the whole thing. And so they're bio dudes. And so I've actually been chatting with them, designing the genetic scenarios, and I have a meeting with them at 10. So they've been helping me put together these scenarios we have 5 different diseases or 6 different diseases that are going to be mystery diseases that the kids have to solve, where the scenarios that they start going through next week with their character will be like going to the doctor, and you have these initial symptoms, and the doctor notes this about your character. And then, so we'll drip feed out this information, and eventually the idea is that it's like a soap opera where they meet, they don't have a good connection to their family history at first, so they can't figure out the genetic portion of their disease. And then they like meet their long lost twin and an aunt and all these people that help them piece together this story to figure out what their disease is. And I'm not the only one who's filled out this spreadsheet. It's actually each student in my leadership team. You can see their names here. They've been filling this out with me, so that we're actually literally designing this project from the ground up with students. So that's been my first week of doing this, and I've just got these invisible columns to, I've got my genetic scaffolding set up for the next several weeks as well, so that as they're going, they don't know what inheritance patterns are right now, but they'll have to figure out what an inheritance pattern is to figure out what their genetic disease is. Right. So that's what I've got going on this week, and it's been really exciting. The kids are all about it. We're getting better submission rates than we would in face-to-face classes. So that's encouraging. So cool. Yeah, that's about it.
Let me ask just a couple questions real quick then. From a assessment standpoint, and I know you do like the competency, and you showed the standards earlier. What specific things are examples that you're looking for under the context of multiple pathways that students can prove mastery of various things? How are you doing that differently now than you would in a face-to-face environment?
I honestly would say I'm doing it pretty similarly. I'll have these tasks, some of these tasks, like I'll look at their annotated bibliography. That will get them, I'll know that they've at least like looked at stuff pertaining to my target. But then their actual performance task, the proof of mastery, will be related to the proof of mastery. Trying to keep a straight face.
Yeah, hey Cedar, how you doing?
Pretty cute. The proof of mastery will be in their journals when they have to respond and like solve these problems that relate to the genetic illness. Like they'll have to show their understanding of inheritance patterns when they're solving the problem. And meanwhile, they'll be collaborating with each other. We're going to set up groups so that the ones that we're going to assign 6 diseases. So each of those diseases will have, 8 kids on it. And so they'll be in a group together, sort of trying to solve what's going on. And so that collaborative piece will be part of it, but the actual things that I'll assess are probably going to be in the journal articles in concert with the annotated bibliography of their scaffolding.
Right. What would you say are kind of like the biggest challenges that this has thrust you into that you still want to somehow deal with?
Not being face to face and getting to solve problems in real time can be a challenge. But the chat room that I've created is helpful that way. Like people can just pop in when they see it, when they've got a chance, they can add their ideas, they can track the history of the conversation. But it would be nice if I could brainstorm this all together. And at our school, we have learning labs where I can assign kids that are falling behind and make sure that I'm going to see them. And right now, trying to track down the kids that are falling behind and make phone calls when they don't answer their phones and send them emails when they don't look at their emails is just the communication. The communication gaps can be really a challenge. But also, I would just say on top of everything else that's being thrust upon us in terms of expectations and figuring out norms for communication with other staff members and all these new, like reinventing the organization of my school at the same time of developing something this ambitious, has certainly added more to my plate. But honestly, my favorite thing about teaching is interacting with students, co-designing with them. And so as long as I can do some of that, I can stay happy as a teacher.
Nice.
And so that's why I'm doing that. I'm doing this instead of just throwing them on Khan Academy.
Yeah, nice. One last question, and then we'll wrap up. If you had to give some advice to a teacher who wants to do something that's disengaging and student-centered, and maybe they don't have HeadRush or necessarily some of the tools that you have, what would that advice be?
I would say use all the free ones out there. I mean, you could lay this whole thing out. In fact, we have a paper version of this because all our kids aren't on HeadRush. They aren't, like, all our kids can't access the internet. So I have to convert all of this into a paper copy as well. And so I would say that is possible. And if you can just figure out what your scaffolding is going to be, for instance, and you can just convert all these to a Google Doc, you can print this whole thing out and send it home. So it doesn't have to be this high tech, really beautifully laid out thing. This whole thing can be laid out on one Google Doc. I mean, you just give them dates for each thing. If you have hyperlinks in there, you provide, the copy of what that hyperlink had. So for my genetic scaffolding, I went to all these websites and I just copied and pasted them onto a Google Doc and sent that home. So there's these 40-page documents I've been sending home for a week of work to a couple students. But I would say you can, using Google Classroom, and we are also using Google Classroom to take a school. You could lay this whole thing out on Google Classroom as well, which is a free tool. So it's really, there's so many options that I would just say, don't let the technology deter you. And the way I have this laid out is not necessarily the way you have to. In fact, many days I'm like, man, I could do this pretty well on Google Classroom too.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So if any teachers want to maybe reach out and ask questions, do you want to give some contact information, or you cool with that?
Sure. Yeah, you can reach me at adam.haigler. I'm making it come out here, adam.haigler at cherokee.k12.nc.us. And happy to answer questions as much as I can in this time when we're all working so hard. But I know that this is a struggle for a lot of us, and but also an unprecedented opportunity to learn how to personalize and go blended in a way that is pretty fun and cutting edge. So
awesome. And just for those who haven't realized it by now, Adam is the co-author of this book with me. So I'll give a plug to that, Open Up Education. And if there's any time that we realize that we actually need to do that, I think it's now. This crisis has shown a light behind the curtain to some of the inequities that we have. And the cool thing is that there are educators out there like Adam who are making it happen, even when they're thrust into a crisis situation. So thanks, Adam, for the work you're doing, and keep it up, my friend.
Yeah, thanks, man.
All right.
Cool. So we've done our